Don't clap for us. We didn't do anything. I am Phil Lord.
And I am Chris Miller. And we did not make this movie. We just really like it.
No, I sat in the back the whole time and just like vibrated with excitement at this staggering accomplishment. Let's bring out.
Yes, let's bring out. We're going to start with the great Ron Bartlett, who is the re-recording mixer.
The sound in this movie rips.
The very talented Paul Lambert.
Lambert, VFX Soup.
Then we're going to editor Joe Walker. Co-writer John Spaihts. And co-writer, producer, and director.
And definitely not the Messiah, Denis Villeneuve.
Do you have the feeling that this will be out of control today?
Just a little bit.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. First, thank you all. Sorry, I take control.
Please, this guy is going to direct this whole thing.
Yeah. No,
Please.
I just want to say thank you for coming and watching the movie in the theater. That means a lot to us. Thank you.
You want to start?
Just like teach me how you did it. Give me your wisdom. Listen, this is an incredible classic novel, and you made an incredible classic movie that, as you say in the picture, makes its own water. It's its own work of art unto itself. I want to understand from the beginning with you and with John and your collaborators, like what was the germ and your way into this picture from all that material?
Part one. No, but if I will say is when we did, but it's true, when we did part one, the entry point were the Bene Gesserit sisters, the women in the novel. That's the way we made at writing the first part. We did some bold choices. We didn't adapt the entire novel, the main part of it, but they are like schools of thought, group of people that are less part in the movie, like the Mentats, or let's say that it's much more. We try to find a simple way to bring this to the screen in the most cinematic way, and it was through women. Voilà. I mean the female characters. I mean.
And this one feels like it's more about the dangers of religion and politics and power and the cult of personality, which feels especially relevant these days.
I have not been following world events. So
okay, good. I'll fill you in on the car on the way back. But how, like, even though those themes are big and enormous, like, how do you? It felt very personal and intimate, and like in cinematically and in the script and in all aspects. How do you balance something so big and weighty and intellectual with something so emotional and personal?
And the question is for.
We'll start with you, and then we can go down.
I will say that the idea here in this movie was to. It all started. John and I knew that Frank Herbert had been disappointed by the way the readers, the first novel was perceived by some readers who saw the Dune as a celebration of Paul Atreides, and he wanted to do a cautionary tale, a warning against messianic figure and the danger of blending religion and politics together. And in order to correct that perception, he wrote a second book, Dune Messiah. And John and I knew that, and in order to be more, we decided to be more faithful to Frank Herbert than to the book. So we changed some aspects. We changed technically one character, Shani, played by Zendaya, who in the movie as a real point of view on things, as an agenda. In the book, she's more like walking in the shadow of Paul. She's a believer. In the movie, we made her someone that has distance from Paul, a critic distance from his political views. And the movie structure, to answer to your question, the movie structure on their relationship, from the birth of their love, the way Paul embraces her culture, falls in love with her, or their relationship struggling with the pressure of the political, the world and its politics, and then their break because he betrays her political views of the world. So it's all that. I think that you felt that, and I'm happy you felt that intimacy, because it was at the heartbeat of the film. Is all the drama of the film is embedded in their love story.
Big ideas can elevate a movie, but people only really make contact with a story through characters.
I was really struck by that watching the picture.
Yeah, and so we had to find a way to anchor those big ideas and the philosophical struggles of the film in human struggles and human relationships, and ideally universal human experiences, things that you can get your teeth into because you have loved, because you have felt your loyalties torn, because you have been angry and wanted revenge, because you've been alienated from someone you loved. These dramas we can all access, even though we are not messiahs or spice warriors on a desert planet. And so we always had to try to find human roots for those stories to grow from.
I was really struck by the economy of the screenplay and the things that you left unspoken but still said, things that were cinematically described. The entire movie takes place interpersonally, as you say, but talk a little bit about the way the images of the movie began, because they don't feel like things you figured out like on the ride into set. They really feel like things that were conceived during the writing process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the image making in film happens at every single step of the process, so that there are images in the film that truly have their roots in the novel itself. They're there on the page. And then when we were laying things out and talking about the story, talking about the way scenes play out, there are images that arise from the action on the page and from that discussion. And then when it leaves my hand and moves into Denis' world and he begins to truly visualize the film once the script is done, then obviously there's many, many tiers of image making beyond that, and I think it goes all the way into post.
A lot of people have called this novel unadaptable, and I think that's because all the studios that optioned it only did that based on the cover of the book and never read what was inside. And then they open it up, they're like, shit, how do we do this? Joe, I wanted to ask you about the cut of the film, because it is so extraordinarily paced. It's so quick. It blazes through like a whole war and then stops and takes its time. Talk a little bit about, you're trained as a composer, if I'm not mistaken.
It's true. I've got a music background. And so I suppose in some way you're always searching for a kind of rhythm, whatever it might be, whether it's a sound or a music thing or a performance thing or an eyebrow. It could be anything. And you're trying to kind of find a global rhythm and to make it feel kind of musical in a way. But I think a lot of it is what we're attesting to is the fact that you can have these fantastically imagined action sequences, but if you don't care for the people enduring them, then you've sort of got nothing. And I felt that part two gave us an opportunity that, because of the good groundwork of part one in terms of setting up the worlds and the lore and the rules, it was free. It felt free in the cutting room to be able to kind of lean into the adventure and the romance and the intrigue and the politics. You could do things a little bit more epigrammatically. You didn't have to explain the voice. So it was just short stabs and it felt very liberating.
That's fantastic. Paul, this movie the visual effects are immaculate and seamless, and you really
Thank you.
believe that you did find real sandworms to ride on,
He did.
which I know is not true. We want to talk a little bit
Spoilers.
about that process, which obviously was very elaborate.
Well, it was actually all in camera, so I didn't actually do anything.
The sandworms were trained so beautifully.
No, it's Denis and Patrice worked for a long time on like concepts and what the actual movie would look like and feel like. And basically, we built those sets. We did the visual effects to match those concepts. And you know, it's a strange process because usually, like a concept is something which is a springboard for like additional ideas. But on both Dunes, it's about trying to match that concept because that is what Denis and Patrice have seen what the actual movie is going to be. And what that allows you to do is because you're pretty certain about a specific background is going to change. Like you know what basically is going to go there. It allows you to shoot in a certain way in which like you can then embellish the work a lot easier, knowing that, you know, like, for example, you know, like how we did the sound screens and that kind of thing is because we know that it's going to be a certain background for those shots, rather than, you know, in post suddenly, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? We never had that. And also the fact on set that you don't have, there isn't anybody on set with the idea that we will just fix something in post. That was never a thing. You know, it's always a case of like doing the best we can, because also I want to get the best from all the collaborators on set, because they are some of the world's best. So if I get the best I can from set, I can then be successful in post because I've got the best plates, I've got the best basis for it, and I've got the best ideas.
It really seems like an amazing collaboration between practical effects, between, you know, digital effects, and the extraordinary photography of Greg Fraser, who, please give him a round of applause. He's not here to be all modest and deflect.
We it's a thing, we applaud Greg when he's not there.
If he's here, he'll just kind of like,
Otherwise, it's not good for his.
he'll act cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron, one thing that's incredible about this is there's decades and decades of original, new, unique sci-fi sounds that have been made over time. And one of the hardest things in a film like this is to find a new soundscape that feels like something you haven't heard before. So many sounds have already been made. But what's great about this film is that it really feels like it has its own voice. And so how do you go about approaching something like that?
Well, I'd have to say hats off to Richard King for that part, who's
Yeah.
not here, but he's in New York. But what a fantastic job he did in creating those sounds and building up those tracks. Excuse me. So getting an embarrassment of riches from him and from Hans and blending those two together is really the recipe that brought that to life. And Denis, through his vision of this whole thing from both Dunes, was to keep it real, as if you're there in Arrakis and you're standing on that sound dune, and how does it feel? What does it sound like? Is it quiet? Is it, you know, tons of sand whipping in your face, or whatever it is, to keep it very real? And that was an edict from Denis, which played very well, and it kept it out of sort of the sci-fi genre and more into the realism.
But real can feel like, okay, let's just put the faders up on like all the sound effects, you know, and like make it feel real. But like this is so selective and expressive. I noticed it on the first movie, and I really noticed it here tonight. It's like when it's loud, it's fucking loud. When it's quiet, it's like not chicken to be quiet, and there I hear choices being made all the time. You want to talk about that because you probably had like anything you wanted.
Yeah, it really is embarrassment of riches in that sense. There's so many tracks to play with, but I love, you know, our whole group as a collective, and comes from the top, is to play with those dynamics and be bold. And Denis allows us to do that, which is, you don't always get that. I mean, they're so bold. You go down from like just barely any wind at all and some footsteps to, this very intimate love story between the two of them and the sand walk and these cool creatures zipping by in the desert to, massive sandworms and a big war. I mean, it's a massive epic film. And if you played everything up the whole way, you guys would be so tired you'd want to run out of the theater. So that was part of the plan, is to bring it down to very quiet levels, make you lean into the film and allow you a rest, but also soak it up in a way that you couldn't if it was in your face all the time.
I think that the favorite sound of the desert is silence. And silence, in order to have the impact, to create an impact with silence, you need dynamics, like Ron says, and you need to have that moment. You have to prepare for silence, and that's why we try to do. Yeah.
You have such an extraordinary group of collaborators. I'm really struck. You're an outrageously gifted filmmaker, and you have an outrageous amount of modesty about it. And I hear your collaborators talk about the experience of working with you, and collaboration is like the big common theme. Talk a little bit about first of all, like how to create space for everybody, get the most out of folks, and still lead. And I want to know what those early conversations were amongst the core group and department heads. Like, what were the themes, ideas, like the things you got fired up about that you guys talked about in those first early conversations?
But the thing is, why, I don't know, there are filmmakers in the room. Personally, one of the things, maybe the thing I love most about cinema is the idea of a creative act, a collective creative act, to work together. I mean, otherwise I would be doing ice sculpture in my basement. It's the idea of the deep joy of feeling the choreography between artists you admire that will create together and a gesture, something poetic together. It's really deeply moving for me, and it's really something that brings meaning to my life. I'm serious when I say that, about the idea of creating something together. And the thing is that you said it perfectly. I mean, it's like I'm working with extraordinary artists. And since the beginning of my career, I had a good intuition to surround myself right from the beginning with people that are stronger than me, meaning that people that when I'm going to play tennis with them, the ball will come back fast. It's like, and in order to improve myself, I mean, you should see the discussion with Joe Walker in the editing room. See, it's not, it's a...
I would say something different. I would say...
No, but where I'm going is that it's the deep pleasure of being challenged. And there's nothing more rewarding than when you feel that your teammates care about the movie as much as you do. And I think that for that, it's to create that space of joy that I have that joy, so I want to try to create that space of joy for my colleagues, so they can, because at the end of the day, I strongly believe that people will give the best of themselves in a how can I say that? Frankly, with love. I'm serious. I think that the people will give. I feel that of course you direct. You give a direction. That's where we go. But then, I'll be lying if on each on the projects there's always many moments where my colleagues will bring great ideas, and that will bring deep joy in my heart, because it's like it will make the film better. It's not good for my ego. It's good for the film.
You can really, I mean, it feels like it's not a chaotic group of ideas. It's a group of every idea just enriches the film into your direction was giving everyone a direction to row, and the idea that you could bring all these different brilliant people to add towards the same direction and make it feel like one cohesive whole was really remarkable.
Thank you. But at the end of the day, I don't know about you guys, but when you walk on set in the morning and you know that someone somewhere in Burbank gave you dozens of millions of dollars, thousands of millions of
Yes,
billions.
like 5 or 6 million
Too late, I lost
dollars.
No, but the people believe in you, and you're surrounded by great artists, and they give you the. I mean, it's a privilege. I mean, it's like.
I would say the knack is he's a very sneaky Canadian. And
Aren't they all? Aren't they all?
All I said so far was just bullshit.
what he does is he gives you ownership of the process and keeps you magnetic north. But it's almost like a game. I think it's his idea, but somehow he convinces us that it's ours. And I approve the tariffs. That's all I've got to say.
I mean, there you go. We talk a little bit more about the choices that you made that where things diverged from the book. Obviously, the choice with Chani was, I think, a really powerful one because it made that Michael Corleone betrayal at the end feel like an emotional betrayal and not just like, oh, he's turned now. It's not just an intellectual idea. And how do you know when something is obviously you both have great reverence for the source material and the intentions of the source material. How do you know what's going to make something more cinematically powerful than what was in the book?
I think the thing that protected us best from missteps in that respect was the boyhood reverence that we shared for the novel growing up. People say Dune is unadaptable because it's big and it's complex, but the other thing it is really, really smart and really good, and it has a deep heart inside it. There's a lot of big, famous books that are not as good and maybe could benefit from adaptation somewhat more. This, I think, didn't need fixing. It was just necessary to chart a course through it. And there were a few places where Dune succeeds a little bit despite itself, maybe because it is a novel, because it can elide things, skip quickly from one point to the next, where cinema gives you a much more intense feeling of time.
Right.
And so to make the philosophical turn, we had to anchor the philosophies to faces that you would feel for. And to make the leaps in time that the story demanded, we had to find a way to keep the past alive while moving quickly into a future. And so those are places where, in order to keep the spirit of the book alive, we had to do different things in story terms because there was only so much room and because we needed to keep passions fanned. And so in order to jump forward and let Paul become Muad'Dib, the Fremen leader, and to allow Aliyah, the daughter, to exist and to speak, we needed some amount of time to pass. But we also needed the wounds of part one to be fresh in all those characters' minds, just as they are for the audience. We lost Duncan, we lost the Duke, we lost House Atreides writ large, we saw the Fremen scattered and slaughtered, and all of those injustices need to be fresh, it needs to be hot. So we shortened the time jump in the novel from a matter of years to a matter of months, so that we could have the evolutions the novel contains, but keep all those passions fresh.
One of the things I enjoyed watching it this time was when his mother is talking about, your sister talks to me, like, I'm not sure whether to believe her or not. And I think that added a dimension that you guys are like all about this idea that people will create a myth about this person for their own gain, and you never quite know whether it's true or whether it's being incepted in him. And I just found that so clever. The movie to me is like like a self-deprecating epic. It's like a hero's journey that's like, yeah, but those are bad.
How many messianic
Right?
figures are people talking to someone who isn't there? And you don't know what underlies the myth.
Right? So a film about a Messiah that's really ambivalent about the idea of there being films about Messiahs, where you hand off to actually a different protagonist at the end, to me is so extraordinary, a big part of what you guys have accomplished.
Thank you.
That's a statement, it's not a question, I'm sorry.
That's very generous. Thank you.
But it's late, and there's a party after this, so we probably shouldn't take any more of your time. The film's fantastic. The whole entire team
Thank you.
are brilliant.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you all.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and congratulations.